It is now strategic turn 6, and House Corbin easily passed their reinforcement roll. The jump ship from the Vesper Marches has crossed the vastness of space and arrived in the star system. The transport ships have detached from the jump ship and are burning full speed to get into orbit of Blue Hole, and will be available in strategic turn 7. Both players know this, so the League's window of opportunity is about to snap shut. This phase of the war has been nothing but bad news bears for House Corbin. Thus far, the League has been successful at establishing a starport blockade by positioning their anti-air guns just west of the starport. The League has also cut off logistical support for South Azure by successfully holding Somberburn, a logistics hub. However, to do this required the deployment of both clan binaries into the Southern Theater. This is a major commitment of forces. Let's take a moment and nerd out on some statistics. House Corbin's defense force consisted of the understrength 3rd Mech Company, as well as the 5th and 8th Mech Company, plus the 2nd Armored Company. Add in the relief force of the 2nd Combined Arms, then the House Corbin Task Force was comprised of 41 mechs, 8 tanks, 4 LRM carriers, and 4 scouts. As the Battle of South Azure unfolded, the League had deployed the 1st and 2nd Binary, so 20 mechs, the 1st Mech Company of the Chupacabras, so 12 more mechs, and the 7th Light Cav Detachment and the anti-air gun lance, for a total of 36 mechs and 4 vehicles. Now, after the 2 battles of Mesa Walk, the Battle of East Welter Keep, as well as the ambush of the 2nd Combined Arms at Summerburn, the numbers came out to this. Ouch. The Battle of Summerburn was a major blow to the defense of South Azure, but the League's expeditionary force is also in pretty bad shape. There are heaps of structural and critical damage on their mechs, which they cannot repair without an interrupted logistical node, like a starport. And that is a significant number of forces deployed to a geographically isolated location. And to move all that military hardware to another place would need something like a starport. You can see the value of the starport keeps rising by the minute. Without a starport, neither side would be able to reposition forces cheaply or quickly. This little district on the map is paved in pure gold, maybe even platinum, or diamonds. You get the point. Both sides not only want it, they need it. Now, before we get into what the players did, let's talk about our bummed out House Corbin players. They had a long discussion, and here's the synopsis of their meeting. The fate of South Azure, without a doubt, will be decided this strategic turn. Reinforcements for House Corbin will not arrive in time to make a difference. If they stayed and fight, they would likely lose. The city will fall, and their forces will likely share the same fate as the 2nd Combined Arms did at the Battle of Summerburn. As you can guess, they felt like they had been checkmated. But then, one of the House Corbins had an idea. But before I explain his idea, I just need to point out that this region of Blue Hole is friendly to House Corbin's forces, meaning there are no League informants living in these towns. Therefore, when House Corbin's army moves through these towns, the League is not informed. But when the League moves through the towns, House Corbin is informed, but with a vague report, something like, enemy spotted at such and such town. No details, just bad guys are here. One more thing to point out, both sides have intelligence gathering satellites that gives the player vision of an area. Back in episode 2 of phase 1 of the war, you saw the League forces move from the peninsula down to Lambridge, but there's actually more to that story. You see, the Chupacabra player wanted to reinforce Lambridge region and move the army there, but the League player thought a water crossing at Jasper Docks was imminent. They came to a compromise by parking their intel satellite over that region to watch the water crossings, and it has been sitting there in orbit for the whole war. So uncharacteristically, the southern campaign for the League force lacks area intelligence. This will be very important in just a minute. Currently, the League has concentrated their forces at Welter Keep and at Summerburn. House Corbin has rightly predicted that the 2nd binary landing at Summerburn means that it will eventually turn south and strike South Azure from the east, and the 1st binary would simultaneously strike South Azure from the west. And they were right, that is exactly what the League was planning on doing. This also meant that eventually League forces will pass through Maplewood. This also means since their forces will stay concentrated to carry out an attack on South Azure, they would have no vision or idea of what is happening in this part of the region. If House Corbin is lucky, patient, and quick, they could, in theory, evacuate all or a portion of their forces and sneak right past the League forces. If the League happened to have left any defenses at Summerburn, it would probably be the Chupacabra's first mech company, which is pretty banged up after fighting in 3 battles. They couldn't possibly prevent 3 companies of mechs from moving through. So evacuate, that's their plan. But that's not all, actually. House Corbin didn't want to just try to save what was left of their fighting force, but also trap the League forces. Remember that platinum-plated, paved in gold with diamond studs of a spaceport? Burn it down. Let the League capture Ashes. Without a starport, the League couldn't use spherical dropships. No, they would need to use aerodyne dropships. And to put that in perspective, a spherical dropship can move a company of mechs, which is comprised of 3 lances, from one starport to another starport with just 2 strategic actions. To do the same thing with an aerodyne dropship would require 6 strategic actions, an expensive and time-consuming proposition. So House Corbin named their plan Operation Skip Town and set things in motion. The 5th and 8th mech companies, using interior lines, left South Azure and headed south towards Swinestone. Around this time is when 2 dropships arrived at Welterkeep, delivering the Chupacabra 8th and 9th Lance, which are newly reinstated lances since the original lances were destroyed at the Battle of Frigicape. There was a brief and awkward reunion with the 7th Light Cav. In fact, this is the first time the Chupacabra 3rd Company was properly formed up together for this war. But House Corbin wasn't too concerned about the arrival of additional forces, because they knew that the League would soon attack South Azure with the goal of capturing the starport, and soon that starport would no longer exist. House Corbin wanted to destroy both the starport and the orbital artillery towers that provided anti-air, but with the enemy so close, I told them that his forces only had time to do 1 pillage per strategic action, so they decided to pillage the starport first. Now remember, news of the destruction of the starport will not be reported to the League forces since this is hostile territory for them. But when the League decided to pillage the logistics hub at Summerburn, it was reported to House Corbin because it was their ally town. This also meant that they no longer had informants in Summerburn. This was bittersweet news for House Corbin. Summerburn was an ideal logistics location that would have favored a counterattack to retake South Azure for House Corbin. However, with the League destroying Summerburn, it meant that the League was not planning to attack north towards Blue Shore. Instead, they were doing a bite and hold strategy. But good luck with that plan, since there's no starport. On the next strategic action, House Corbin wanted to destroy the orbital artillery towers in Spellcombe. But that is when the League attacked with the first binary, supported by the Chupacabra 3rd Mech Company, interrupting their pillage action. House Corbin could have withdrawn his forces, but to do so would likely tip off the League about Operation Skip Town. So regrettably, they left their forces in place as the rear guard, while the rest of the army scooted along the southern routes to Darkstrand. At this time, League forces also landed artillery at Senegate, which really ticked off the neutral city of Sapphire Bay. Both players were too focused on the southern campaign to really take advantage of this political opportunity. As soon as House Corbin was notified that the enemy was spotted in Maplewood, he sent his units north towards Luna Cape with the intent to attack Summerburn, which may or may not even have any occupying forces still. At the same time, the 2nd Binary and 1st Mech Company declared an attack on Mesa Walk. On game day, I had the players arrive thinking there were going to be 2 battles. House Corbin thought they were fighting in Spellcombe and Summerburn, and the League players thought that they would be fighting the 3rd Battle of Mesa Walk, as well as the Battle of Spellcombe. I wish you could have seen their faces when I, the Game Master, informed them that there was only 1 battle today, the Battle of Spellcombe. The League is met with a blazing inferno as they lay witness to the ruins of the starport. This is the Battle of Spellcombe. Welcome to what is left of Spellcombe Starport. I really wish you could have seen it before it was burned. It's truly a pity. It had a really nice VIP lounge for frequent flyers. The facilities of the starport are destroyed and inoperable. However, the anti-air and anti-orbital guns are still fully operational. Forces of House Corbin want to destroy the guns, then evacuate south to escape the battlefield. The more forces of House Corbin can save, the more the players can use for future operations and counteroffensives. House Corbin's forces consists of the 2nd Armor, which has 2 lances of Camisori tanks and 1 lance of LRM carriers. Unfortunately, a tank and carrier were destroyed at the Battle of East Welterkeep. House Corbin also has their 3rd mech company deployed, which is comprised of an array of battle lances. The 7th Light Battle Lance has 2 Wasps, a Trebuchet, and a Bushwhacker. The 8th Heavy Battle Lance has 2 Atlases and a Warhammer. Unfortunately, the Vulture was destroyed in a previous battle and has not yet been replaced. The 9th Medium Battle Lance only has 1 rifleman left operational. The rest were destroyed at the Battle of East Welterkeep. The surviving rifleman, due to logistical shortages caused by the League's blockade, still has critical damage to its engine and missing 3 structure points. The attacking force is being led by the Alyina Mercantile League's 1st binary. The Chupacabra 3rd Mech Company is still in reserve, and since war chest points are getting tight, the players are hesitant to deploy the Chupacabras into the battle, though they do have that option. The 1st binary has 2 battle stars. The 1st battle star has a Hunchback 2C, Warhammer 2C, Supernova, Stone Rhino, and a Marauder 2C. The 2nd battle star has Ebon Jaguar, Kingfisher Prime, Turkina Prime, a Huntsman, and Crossbow Prime. The Kingfisher, again, due to logistical shortages, still has 4 structure points of damage that have not yet been repaired, as well as critical damage to its weapons. A Thumper artillery battery, located on the other side of the channel at Cinegate, is just barely in range and will be providing artillery support for the League forces. The starport has 2 orbital artillery guns that act as anti-air and orbit weapons. Both have a construction factor of 4. There are also 2 auto-security turrets fixed to the tops of these towers. They have a construction factor of 2 each and can be used as fixed gun positions to fire upon the League mechs. The players for House Corbin have made it very clear they have no intention to stay on the battlefield longer than necessary. They want to take out the guns, but not at the expense of their forces. At the beginning of the battle, the League was very surprised to find the starport destroyed. The player was not yet sure why House Corbin's forces were still in the area. They began to wrongly suspect that House Corbin was planning a counteroffensive against Welterkeep for the next strategic turn. If that was the case, the player was hesitant to deploy too many forces here and weaken the League's position around Welterkeep or risk their anti-air guns being captured. The players had not yet realized that the anti-orbital guns were in danger. Before we get into this battle, we would like to give a special thanks to all the Patreon supporters, especially to our notable nobles. We would also like to notify you all of our new notable noble 130, who took on the noticeable noble cause of supporting this channel. Thanks 130, and thank you all for your continued support. House Corbin deployed his forces first. They had garrisoned 1 lance of tanks in the north. From that location, they also have line of sight on the anti-orbital guns. The rest of 2nd Armored Company was deployed near the center of the map, on the southern edge of the starport with perfect line of sight on both anti-orbital guns. The Light Battle Lance was garrisoned in this apartment building, in position to strike out in any direction to support the destruction of the anti-orbital guns. The rest of the 3rd Mech Company was positioned in the south to cover the southern escape route. For House Corbin to successfully escape, the units must exit at the southern edge of the map. They cannot escape from any other edge because all those edges lead to enemy-controlled territory. Speaking of the League forces, they won initiative. Therefore, House Corbin will move and shoot first. For proportional movement, House Corbin will need to activate 3 lances, since they have 3 times as many formations on the battlefield than that of the League. House Corbin activates all 3 of the lances in his 2nd Armored Company, and all the units are given the order to stand still in order to improve their shooting. League forces activate their 1st star of the 1st binary, and ground move on to the battlefield. At this point, the League players still do not know that the objective of House Corbin is to destroy the anti-orbital guns. She still thinks that this is a fight to conquer the city. House Corbin, still needing to do proportional movement, elects to have his mechs stand still. All of his mechs are already in cover, with line of sight of the anti-orbital guns. It was the League forces' turn to move again, and she was still wrongly interpreting the actions of House Corbin. To her, It looked like House Corbin was about to make a desperate last stand. So she decided to have the Turkina and the damaged Kingfisher take cover and provide a base of fire, while the Jaguar, Crossbow, and Huntsman advance into forward fighting positions. Onto the shooting phase, House Corbin will shoot first. The LRM carriers took aim at the farthest away anti-orbital gun and made short work of it with a target number of 8. All of the LRM carriers hit, dealing 9 damage, destroying the gun emplacement. Next up, House Corbin activates his tank lance, which were sitting at short range of the other anti-orbital gun. They swivel their turrets and fire. All 4 tanks hit, which destroys the gun emplacement. And just like that, the objective of House Corbin was met. But now, they need to escape off the map's southern edge. Now that the guns are all destroyed, the rest of their forces can shoot at the League's mechs. The 2 gun emplacements take aim at the advancing League forces and fire their large lasers. Both fired at the Jaguar. The first missed completely. The second hit, dealing 1 damage to the mech's armor. The tanks in the north take aim at the Marauder, who, if you recall, destroyed one of their tanks at the Battle of East Welter Keep. Unfortunately, the target number was quite high, and they all missed. The light battle lance didn't have line of sight, but the heavy and medium battle lance did have line of sight on the Jaguar and the crossbow. The camouflaged Atlas fired at the Jaguar hiding behind cover at long range. Using a lucky point, it was able to hit the Jaguar, dealing another 3 damage to the mech's armor. The Atlas and Warhammer, despite standing still, had a target number of an 11 and were unable to hit the crossbow. The Rifleman was at medium range, so its target number was a 9 and was able to hit, dealing 4 damage to the armor of the crossbow. However, due to critical damage to the Rifleman's engine, this generated 1 heat for the Rifleman. The League forces can now return fire. With House Corbin destroying the guns, it became quite clear what House Corbin was up to. The League player also guessed that House Corbin will likely now try to do a mad dash south to get the heck out of town. So, the League player had their first star target the overpass and was able to easily destroy it. This caused the Lance of Tanks to be stuck on that raised platform and cut off from escaping south. The League player smirked and said, "Hey, thanks for the new tanks, buddy." Next, the League called in an artillery strike from the Thumpers in Sinigit. They targeted the Riflemen, but unfortunately, they rolled snake eyes and the attack splashed harmlessly. Most of the League's second star did not have line of sight on House Corbin's mechs, but the crossbow could see the Rifleman and return fire. The target number was a 7 since the Rifleman stood still, but the player rolled poorly and missed despite using a lucky point. The Jaguar returned fire from the camouflaged Atlas. The target number was a 9, and it had better luck, hitting the Atlas and dealing 2 damage to the mech's armor. And that brings turn 1 to a close. House Corbin has successfully destroyed the anti-orbital guns and must now make a desperate escape south. The League forces won initiative again, so House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. House Corbin still needs to do proportional movement. He activates his Rifleman and hobbles off the battlefield. He then activates his LRM carriers and moves south. This leaves them a tad in the open, but also gives them a clear line of sight of the clan mechs. And finally, the marooned tanks, who are not yet out of the fight, stand still to improve any long-range shooting if any targets present themselves. The League activates their first star and sprints south for possible better shooting positions for turn 3. House Corbin activates his last 3 units. The light battle lance sprints south. The 2 wasps sprint into some cover. Unfortunately, the trebuchet and bushwhacker were still left exposed, but they are at long range and likely won't draw fire. The tanks ground moved into positions behind the LRM carriers, adding their firepower to their sector of fire. The heavy battle lance activates, and the Warhammer moves forward into the Rifleman's previous position, while the Atlases climb on top of the building and into the courtyard to improve their firing positions. Wanting to break line of sight, but also get into good firing positions for the next turn, the second star activates and the Huntsman and Crossbow sprint forward into cover. The Turkina sprints into the previous position of the Huntsman, and the Ebon Jaguar sprints into cover. The Kingfisher steps back behind the building to break line of sight. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. Most units could not see each other since they were all sprinting to try to break line of sight. However, the heavy battle lance could still see the marauder, and they opened fire on it at long range. The target number was a 10, and most of them missed. Except the Camo Atlas, which scored a critical hit, dealing 3 damage to the marauder's armor and a critical hit to its fire control. It seemed the League player forgot that there were auto turrets on the battlefield, and it rotates and shoots the Jaguar, easily hitting and dealing 1 more damage to its armor. The House Corbin player was about to end his round of shooting when he had an idea. His tanks targeted the building that the Jaguar was taking cover behind and destroyed it. This opened up line of sight for the LRM carriers, but still provided some cover for the Jaguar. The LRM carriers took aim and attacked the Jaguar at short range with a target number of 8. 1 missed, but 2 hit, dealing 6 damage, which was enough to destroy the mech. It was the League's turn to shoot back, but all of their mechs had either sprinted or didn't have line of sight, so that left just the Thumper artillery battery, who targeted the Warhammer and nailed it, dealing 1 damage to its armor. On turn 3, the League won initiative again for a 3rd time in a row. House Corbin needs to move and shoot first. On a dopamine high from destroying a clan mech, the House Corbin players considered staying on the battlefield for another turn of shooting. Their aim, pun intended, was to take down another clan mech. But that sort of thinking has burned them in the past. House Corbin has already taken out their objectives, and unfortunately, will need to abandon 3 tanks. If he stayed, he might get another mech. They were desperate to thin the ranks of clan mechs, but not at the cost of losing more mechs or LRM carriers. But in the end, they decided to cut their losses, run and fight another day. The League captured the pillaged starport, 3 tanks, and the anti-orbital guns, which were demolished. And in the process, lost 1 clan mech. The mech warrior survived, but is in recovery. House Corbin's 3rd mech and 2nd Armored Company may have escaped the city, but they are still deep behind enemy lines. Their fate will be decided during the next strategic turn. Before we sign out, I just want to remind you, next strategic turn, House Corbin's long-awaited reinforcements will finally arrive. The question is, where will House Corbin commit their forces? The south, land bridge, or open a new front in this war? I hope you enjoyed this battle report. Thanks for watching, and we will see you at the next battle. Until then, I hope you have a tabletop war game in your near future.